Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the show on this Tuesday, 3rd of October, 2023. Thank you for tuning in. I'm glad to have you guys here. Spotted this article in Newsweek. Russia's finally admitted it. They're laying out plans for a new empire, and it's approved. It's been stuff that goes on Russian state TV for all of the Russians to actually see on their TVs is generally approved by the Kremlin. And the Russian TV has laid out their plans for a new empire. So I guess this empire would be something like the former glory of the Soviet Union, I guess, or whatever. But I mean, you can watch this. It's a 30-second clip from Russian state TV, and you could watch it. Moving on, what I wanted to talk about is this. A Democratic congressman was carjacked at gunpoint in Washington, D.C. as the crime chaos spreads. It says late Monday night, Republican Henry Geller, or is it Seller, a Democrat of Texas, was carjacked in the Navy Yard neighborhood, about a mile from the United States Capitol complex. He was carjacked. He was parking his car in the evening. 3 armed assailants approached the congressman and stole his vehicle. Honest to gosh. Now, here's something I wanted to show you guys. I'm going to read 2 articles here. One is written by one side of the political spectrum, and one's written by the other side of the political spectrum in the United States. What I want you to notice is the way these 2 articles, the way they kind of, they're the same story, but with a totally different light, a totally different flair to them, a totally different feel to them. And this emphasizes the political structure in the United States of America right now, how the right and left wing are, I would almost say they're at war with each other. Like, I mean, it's not war, but it's like, well, you know what I mean. Let's take a look here. First article comes from Zero Hedge, and it says, Philadelphia journalist who mocked concern over violent crime in Democrat cities got shot dead in home. A left-wing Philadelphia journalist who mocked concern over rising crime in Democratic-run cities was shot to death in his home. Josh Kruger was shot 7 times after someone entered his home and shot him at the base of the stairs and then fled. Kruger ran outside to seek help from his neighbors and collapsed, where police found him. They responded to a call just before 1:30 a.m. on the 23rd block of Watkins Street. And it goes on to say Kruger was rushed to the Penn Presbyterian Medical Center, where he died just before 2:15 a.m. and so on. Now, this other article right here is written by the other side of the political spectrum. And it says, Philadelphia journalist who advocated for homeless and LGBT something community shot and killed at home. It says, a journalist, an advocate who wrote from homelessness and addiction to serve as a spokesman for Philadelphia's most vulnerable, was shot and killed in his home early Monday, police said. John Kruger, 39, was shot 7 times and collapsed in the street after seeking help, police said. He's pronounced dead at the hospital a short time later. And then it goes on to say, Josh cared deeply about our city and its residents, which was evident both in his public service and in his writing. his intelligence, his creativity, his passion, his wit shone bright in everything that he did. And his light was dim much too soon. So then the article goes on. So you see two articles written by the two different sides of the political spectrum there. What do you guys think? The only reason I read these two articles is I want to point out the divide and how even in news reporting the divide's there. And if you got eyes, you can see it. But this potential divide is something much more divisive. There's an old saying, united we stand, divided we fall. Also, something divided against itself cannot stand if something's divided against itself. This division is very deep. I've never seen anything like it before. American people were united at one time, even on both sides of the political, even though they got along altogether, but they were united behind their love for America, both sides. Now what we got is no holes barred. That's what we got now. And this is a very divisive situation. It's not good. Very bad. There's no bipartisan support. And this is why they can't get nothing done in government as well, hardly, or having a lot of trouble getting stuff done. So now moving on, we're going to take a look at the silver price today. Boy, this stuff is ever on sale. It's up 8 cents today at $21.12. $21.12 for silver. That's really cheap. What can I say is, I've said this for a long time on my show, that before silver makes its final move and it runs out completely, it's gone, I think they're going to, as long as they got silver in the coffers to keep industry supplied and to keep coin and bar demand fulfilled, they're going to keep suppressing this price. And then at one point, when the price is at its lowest, they're going to sell out on silver, and there's not going to be any silver. They think that can't happen. I've been talking about this for years, that they're going to run out. They haven't yet. But I think they've got close a couple times where it's very tight, very tight. Supply and demand on this is most of this, well, I would say most all the silver being sold now is silver that's been freshly mined. So they're very dependent upon the miners to supply industry, and they run into a deficit every year. And what that means is, say the mines produce 800 million ounces. So let's just say for ease, let's say 800. The mines, or maybe even make it easier, 8. They produce 8 units. And when you take industrial demand and you take coin and bar demand and all the demand and put it all together, it's like 1 billion ounces. So that's, figuring 100 million ounces is 1 unit. So that's 8 units. They produce 8 units. But the demand is 10. So they're 2 units short every year. Or 200 million ounces short, basically. So where's that going to come from? Well, up till now, they've been able to supply it. I don't know where they're getting it. Maybe they're getting it from places and they've put it away in the past to cover that shortfall. And I don't know how much more they have put away that they can find to cover the shortfall for how much longer. But at some point, that shortfall, like if they're running short 200 million ounces a year, each year adds up First year they got to dip in 200 million they got to come up with. The next year 200 million more. First thing you know, it's a $500 million. The next thing you know, they're out of silver. It's going to happen. It's going to happen pretty soon. It's just, if I could only see how much they got in the back room that they can supply to keep that shortfall going, how much longer? I don't know that, see? I do know that these large inventories, like a large inventory of silver, like 1 billion ounces of silver, I do know that they used to have a lot more of that. You were to go back to 1964 and you were to say, okay, supply us with 2 billion ounces of silver or die. They would come up with it. They would say, here's your 2 billion ounces of silver. But now they couldn't do that right now. If all of a sudden they had to fulfill real physical silver, 2 billion ounces, I don't think they'd be able to come up with it. We've got to that point now, at this point. It would be a no-go. In fact, even smaller amounts now are stymieing them. Like amounts like 100 million ounces would probably stymie them now at this point, you know. It's not like it was. I think back around, I think it was back around 1975 or whatever, I think they could have come up with like 4 billion ounces. But they've been whittling away at this stuff. That's what happens when you whittle away at something long enough. In a while, you haven't got nothing left. You keep consuming it. Believe me, living up here in Canada, I know all about that. You know, every year I put away wood in the woodshed. You whittle away at it by spring. I mean, you might have what's called 6 cords of wood, and that's a lot of wood. That's like a big dump truck load full of wood when you start in the fall, burning in the fire. By spring, there's nothing left. And that's what's happening to their silver supply. It's being whittled away at. And sooner or later, we're going to hit the spot where there's going to be none, and then it's going to burst free because they're not going to be able to supply the market. Or they're going to have great difficulty. So what'll happen then? The price is going to explode up to where it's supposed to be. And then people who have silver sitting on the sidelines is going to bring it in and start selling it. And then they'll have silver again. So it won't last real long. It's just going to be a massive move up in price until it hits the price point where silver's going to reappear again. Because it's out there. It's just people aren't going to sell for these prices. If you put silver away at like, and you paid over $30 an ounce for it, are you going to sell for $21.12? You know, I mean, no, nobody in their right mind is going to sell because right now these prices are like probably about the lowest it's ever been in history right now. I've rambled on a little bit about silver, but really, honestly, guys, when you buy an ounce of silver, consider a mining production cost probably between $15 and $20 right now. All-in cost of mining production. You tell me what other product out there's got such a small profit margin. They make enormous profit margins. You go to the hardware store this afternoon, right, and you want to buy some screws? You can bet they didn't even pay half of what they're charging you. They probably only paid a third of what they're charging you for them. They might only paid 20% or 30% of what they're charging you. That's profit margin. You know, but with silver, what's the profit margin? By the time they get it out there and sell it to you, honest to gosh, the miners aren't making hardly anything right now. Now that they dropped the price the last few days from nearly $24 down to, there goes the profit margin out the window, or a good chunk of it anyway. Cryptocurrency is going up in price. You know, Bitcoin is at 27,340. And Ethereum is at 1647. Of course, Ethereum was higher yesterday. Taking a look at XRP is at 50.8 cents. Dow Jones Industrial Average today, she's taking a drop. This might be the start of what I've been expecting, but we've had so many false starts now. It'll drop a couple hundred points, and then the next day it rebounds again. And we've been through so many false starts now, I'm kind of skeptical. But this could be the big start, the big one that I've been expecting. It could be. But I'm not going to jump in and say it is, even though I'm expecting the big one, because we've had so many false starts. And when we do get the big one, what I expect it to look like, see this one right here, just at the start of the COVID epidemic? That's what I expect it to look like. And I'm expecting it right in here someplace. Right in about there someplace is where I'm expecting it. Maybe over to here is where I'm expecting it, along in there. We might get one more little bounce here before and you're going to get this big downward spike, and that's our deflationary spike event, what I call a deflationary spike event that I've been talking about for ages. And when it happens, they'll respond to it. Look, they tell you that, oh, they're not going to, oh, there's going to be a government shutdown. And at the last minute, they come in with the money. They always do that. Look, back when they were doing the debt debacle a few months ago, they're saying, oh, Janet Yellen was on there saying, oh, if they don't extend the debt, well, the country's going to go down the tubes, and all this kind of stuff. The last minute, what do? Every time. And this will be the same sort of thing. And we get a great big market collapse, they'll come in at the last minute and rescue things. But it's going to be at the expense of the dollar again. They're going to hyperinflate this dollar in the end. There's no other way around it. They've been trying to not let the hyperinflation hit. They call it inflation, but it was heading toward hyperinflation, and they've stalled it a little bit with some disinflation by raising interest rates so high that the money's all evaporating from the system, and now we're going to have a crash. You make interest rates high enough, and it's the same thing as if you're trying to clean your car, and you got it all covered with soap bubbles, and you got the hose there, and you pick up the hose and you pull the handle back to squirt the water out, and nothing comes out. What's happened is your kid's around the corner and he's got the hose pinched. And this is what the Fed's doing. They're pinching off the hose for money. By raising interest rates and having interest rates go so high that there's going to be no money lent out. This is how the biggest way money gets created in the system is through fractional reserve lending that creates money from nothing. All the way across the board it works that way. And people borrow on their credit cards, they create money. You're just like a bank. That money didn't exist. You go out and you purchase something for, say, $500. Now that money springs into existence. But you're not going to do that if you know credit card rates are so high. You're going to try to pay off your credit card if rates are too high. And what's going to happen, too, if the rates are too high? People aren't going to borrow from the bank. And the next thing you know, the money supply gets cut off, just like the garden hose gets pinched. So what happens is the garden hose gets pinched, and there's a little bit of pressure left in there. That's what we're working on right now, that little bit of pressure that's left in the garden hose. But the garden hose pinched straight off by the Fed down there on their end. They're like the kids hiding behind the buildings, get the garden hose pinched. But you get a few little squirts when you first pull the trigger back on the hose, garden hose, to wash the bubbles off the car. You get a few little squirts comes out of there before it just goes empty. And there's where we're at. We're on those last few squirts of liquidity. And I don't know when it's going to exactly completely run out. But this is Great Depression sort of thing. When it finally runs out suddenly, there's going to be, it's going to try to bankrupt the system. The pile of derivatives, everything is going to try to bankrupt it. And then the markets are going to do the same thing. Everybody's going to be trying to pull money to, it could be margin. Could be pulling money on the margin. And this thing, it could drop rather with no free fall with no bottom. They will step in and they will open up the floodgates of money, but it's going to have to be like they did on the SVB crisis, Silicon Valley Bank crisis, $400 billion. $400 billion in a week, the Fed. That's how they turned that around. They'll turn this around too. But it's going to be at the expense of the dollar. And just wait. When you see the debt market starting to do what the debt market's doing now, this is imminent. This is going to happen very, very soon. Taking a look at crude oil today, 89.10. It's up 28 cents. But take a look at these bonds. Look at this. The U.S. 10-year is up 10 basis points at 4.78. Remember what I told you about that 5 marker? That's when I think it's going to start to really come apart at the seams, is when that 10-year crosses 5%. And by gosh, every day she's getting closer. 4.92 on the U.S. 30-year. It's climbed 12.5 basis points today. This is very serious. What's happening is very serious. A lot of investors, I don't think, realize how serious the situation is right now. And how we're going to go from one extreme to the other. Right now, we're pinched. And we're being pinched off, and the money supply and everything is like, they're pinching off the money right now. But on the other side of this, when they have to open the money back up again, it's going to be like 180 degrees in the opposite direction. And there's where your dollar is already we got big time inflation trying to chew away. Can you imagine what it's going to be when they do all that? It's going to shoot right up to 35% inflation per year. And at a certain point, where is that point, I wonder, when the consumer out there says to himself, he says, Martha, I ain't keeping my money in the bank right now. I've been eyeing up that new little car, or I've been eyeing up something he wants to buy, or we're going to redo the kitchen or whatever, because it's going to cost a lot more next year. And we're not getting any interest on our money. And you know, the banks have been having this. Deposits have been pulling out of the banks like crazy. Not all of it's been going into things like money markets and things like that, and back into the system. Not all of it. They might pull out $5 million, and they might use $1 million to spend on certain. This is part of what's been keeping the economy going, is all this money coming out of the banking system right now. Something like 75, it averages out to like $75 billion a month has been coming out of the banks. Out of savings. There's roughly 20 trillion in savings in the United States. And so, I guess you guys didn't know that there's 20 trillion in savings in the United States. It's a lot of money. Anyway, let's move on and take a look right here at the U.S. dollar index today at 107.20. And it is kind of going along sideways today, but it's been up. The dollar's up right now. Thank you guys for listening to my show. Like and subscribe, and we'll catch you guys in the next episode, and have a great afternoon. Bye-bye.